Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. Thank you all for joining us this Labor Day. We're celebrating by bringing you two amazing shows tonight. The one right now and then again at our regular time, 7 p.m. Hope you can make it back. The National Guard has played an important role in securing those freedoms as well as the safety and security of states during emergencies or civil unrest. Governors are the commanders-in-chief of their state National Guard for emergencies and disasters within their respective states. The National Guard also plays an important role in our current National Defense Plan. However, that role has constitutional limitations and requirements. Over the last 20-plus years, we have relied more on the National Guard in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, and other third world hellholes. Many of those deployments to combat zones were done under the authorization for the use of force that Congress gave to President George W. Bush in the early 2000s after 9/11. Others were done under even less congressional authority than that. But the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8 grants war-making power to the Congress, not the executive. The National Guard are citizen soldiers, as were the majority of the founding generation. Both the National Guard and active duty members take an oath to uphold the Constitution. Is it too much to ask that our federal and state government at least follow the Constitution and not send soldiers to combat without a declaration of war from Congress? Last session, the Tennessee legislature had the opportunity to pass legislation that stated that the Tennessee National Guard soldiers would only be sent to combat if Congress declared war as required. That legislation was met with strong opposition from certain state legislators and the senior leadership of the Tennessee National Guard. The bill was sent to summer study by a co-sponsor of the legislation, Rick Eldridge. Recent actions by Representative Eldridge indicate he hopes to kill the legislation in the upcoming session or in the summer study. Our guest tonight is a former Green Beret and combat veteran who supports the passage of the legislation and has testified in committee to that effect. His name is Nate Dressel, and he will join us in just a few minutes. But first, it's time for the Informer Report. Trump lost the latest round in the courts on the issue of tariffs. The tariffs will remain in effect until the Supreme Court makes final decision in October. If the Supreme Court rules against Trump, it will be a huge loss and reduce his ability to negotiate with other countries. The court didn't agree that the trade deficit met the standard for the emergency powers utilized in a law that Congress passed in the 70s. The Constitution clearly states that tariffs are a power delegated to Congress, not to the executive. Even with legislation, it would seem like a violation of the separation of powers doctrine to give emergency powers to the president, and that's any president and not just Trump. So that's something to think about. Hard to tell how this will turn out. He said that 4 of the judges on the panel supported him. They were Republican. There are people that think that the Supreme Court will uphold his power to do that. But I just want to remind everybody, let's not confuse liking results with something being constitutional. And of course, those that opposed him were Democrats, but even a broke clock can be right twice a day. We really need to try to follow our Constitution. I mean, that's what it's there for. So I think it'd be terrible if he lost that. At the same time, if he doesn't have it legitimately, then we're going to have to figure something else out. And we're at, in a really bad spot because past Congresses, past administrations have made terrible deals. He's really just trying to fix what earlier administrations and earlier Congresses allowed. But he may not have the constitutional authority to do that, so we'll have to see. Trump is sending mixed messages on Ukraine again. He still says no troops, but he authorized shipping 3,350 ERAM missiles. Those are extended range attack munitions. They have a range of 250 miles once launched from an aircraft. Now, supposedly the ERAMs would be paid for by an unnamed European country, But the fact that the U.S. shipped them directly to Ukraine rather than selling them to NATO first, as Trump said he would do it a few weeks ago, I'm sure that will, incline the Russians to place more value on what Trump does rather than what he says. The last thing we need to do is get involved in a boots-on-the-ground war in Ukraine. The Trump administration is ensuring illegal aliens don't get federally funded housing. They can no longer leave the citizenship block blank, and all federally funded housing managers have 30 days to complete an audit, ensure that no illegal alien is getting federally funded housing. Past due. Glad to hear that. He's doing great things on immigration. So amen to that. Last story for the night. Rumor has it that the Tennessee AG will likely appeal the state's loss in the Hughes versus Lee case, in which a chancery court in Gibson County found that the intent to go armed clause in the No Guns in Parks law were unconstitutional based on the Tennessee state constitution. I guess the governor and AG like spending our tax dollars against us to deny us our rights. Our legislature as a whole is all but worthless in upholding their oath and protecting our rights. We have a lot of reptiles to remove in 2026. Go to the Tennessee Firearms Association link to be heard on this issue. There's a link there that you can get on the website, on our website. We have Tennessee Firearms link there that you can get word to your legislator, your senator, and I believe also the AG that, look, we don't want to waste any more money on allowing you to try to take our rights. I mean, they take our tax dollars and work against our rights, and that's just flat out wrong. If you have a news story that you want to alert us to, be sure to send an email to tninformer.tv@gmail.com. Now a little about our guest. Nate Dressel is a U.S. Army Green Beret with over 20 years of service between active duty and National Guard. He has multiple combat deployments as well as training missions throughout Southeast Asia. He currently lives in Talbot, Tennessee, where he and his wife operate Frontier Coffee Company, a commercial-scale coffee roastery in the Talbot Farm Store. He's passionate about saving and restoring the conservative and family-based values to the people of East Tennessee, standing up for the military and veteran-related issues, and ensuring that Tennessee maintains its state autonomy. Hey, thank you for joining us. How's it going today?
I am quite well. Thank you for having me, Dave. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate that you've been in this fight already. So I want to get to the questions pretty quick, but before I actually get to the questions, I mentioned in the opening that you support House Bill 129 by Michelle Bruneau. That's also known as the Defend the Guard bill. I want to take a quick look at some of the key points in that legislation. And so we actually have that legislation posted on our site. You can read the whole bill. What I've got up on the screen here are the critical portions of it. And if you'll see there, you got number 2 in parentheses. It says official declaration of war. Means an official declaration of war made by the United States Congress pursuant to the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11. B, the Tennessee National Guard, or a member of the National Guard, must not be released from military service of this state into active duty combat unless the United States Congress has passed an official declaration of war or has taken official action pursuant to the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, to explicitly call forth the Tennessee National Guard or a member of the National Guard for the enumerated purposes of executing the laws of the Union, repelling an invasion, or suppressing an insurrection. So I want to repeat that. When the Guard is called up, they've kind of limited what they're supposed to be called up for. Executing the laws of the nation, repelling an invasion, or suppressing an insurrection. The governor shall take all actions necessary to comply with this section. This section does not limit or prohibit the governor from consenting to the deployment of a Tennessee National Guard member under Title 32, defense support for civil authority missions within the United States and United States territories. So I just wanted to make sure I had kind of an overview of the Defend the Guard law. Now, you testified in support of this legislation, so Why should the average citizen of Tennessee support this legislation, in your opinion?
I mean, it's very short legislation. It's very well written, clear and concise wording on it. Like you read, basically what this legislation does is says that the National Guard cannot be deployed to a war zone unless Congress has actually done their job and declared war. In short, the people that volunteered to be citizen soldiers for the National Guard, the first mission should be to the state, to their communities, and to the National Guard, which is a state-owned and operated organization. It might take a couple minutes, but if you don't mind, I could read the testimony that I submitted back in March.
Sure, absolutely.
All right. So, again, the Public Service Subcommittee met in March to discuss the bill. That is when Representative Rick Eldridge, who was a co-sponsor of the bill, essentially killed it by saying that he was going to send it to summer study, which has not happened yet. Right. But yeah, let me read the testimony that I submitted to the subcommittee, and that I think will outline my views on this a little bit more clearly. Okay. So 5 March 2025 to the Public Service Subcommittee. I wish to submit my written testimony in support of Tennessee House Bill 0129. My name is Nate Dressel. I am a U.S. Army Green Beret, multiple tour combat veteran, and currently hold the rank of Master Sergeant in the Tennessee Army National Guard. While I would prefer to testify to the committee in person, I am currently on military orders training Tennessee National Guard medics who are preparing to deploy to Europe in support of Ukraine. Today, March 5th, 2025, is my final opportunity to run this group of selfless soldiers through their advanced trauma training. In consideration of their upcoming mobilization, I believe it is my responsibility as a military leader to provide them with every bit of training I possibly can to ensure them and their troops in their care the highest chance of survival should they find themselves in an unfortunate combat situation overseas. The Tennessee National Guard's stated purpose and missions are as follows. Purpose. Our purpose is to maintain an efficient, well-trained, well-equipped, and responsive military and civilian state and national emergency response force ready to respond to any state or federal mission. State mission. Our state mission is to provide the Governor of Tennessee with units capable of performing missions in accordance with the Tennessee Emergency Response Plan. Federal mission. Our federal mission is to provide the President and the Secretary of Defense with units capable of performing their wartime mission. By their own definition and listed prior to the federal mission, the Tennessee National Guard is first and foremost a Tennessee state asset who should be trained, ready, and available to perform missions in accordance with the Tennessee Emergency Response Plan. Furthermore, by their own definition, the Tennessee National Guard should be prepared and ready to perform, quote, wartime missions. The last time Congress declared war was on June 5th, 1942. Despite that fact, we spent nearly 20 years sacrificing America's and Tennessee's finest young men and women in the global war on terror. 7,085 U.S. troops were killed in combat during this charade, with the highest percentage of killed in action being National Guard soldiers. Please bear in mind that the number is only KIA and does not include the 50,000 plus wounded in action, the 30,000 GWAT veterans who have committed suicide, and the hundreds of thousands more who are living with severe disabilities and extreme PTSD. The final score of GWAT, families destroyed, veterans living daily nightmares, a withdrawal that only left questioning and embarrassment about our service and sacrifice, and a negative sum game for America. Our adversaries, on the other hand, the Taliban, received all of the top-notch equipment we left behind, as well as weekly funding from the United States to the tune of $40 million per week. Recently, eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina were hit by an inexplicable inland hurricane, causing damage unlike anything I've seen in actual combat zones. On the same day Hurricane Helene was ripping Appalachia to pieces and leaving our friends, family, and neighbors destitute, over 700 members of the Tennessee National Guard were mobilized on federal orders to deploy to the Middle East for an 18-month mission to Kuwait. While the Guard did send several hundred soldiers to respond to the disaster, the response was far too little and did not last the duration to truly assist the people of eastern Tennessee. I can say with firsthand knowledge that Tennessee's National Guard soldiers should still be in the mountains to this day assisting with cleanup and relief efforts. Instead, our communities look like forgotten war zones. What is the Tennessee National Guard preparing for instead? Troops are currently preparing for a 9-month trip to Europe with the purpose of assisting Ukraine from outside of its borders. I would venture to say that by and large, Tennesseans are frustrated and disagree with the hundreds of billions which have already been hemorrhaged to Ukraine. While President Trump may be pausing financial support to Ukraine, we as a state may actually be the ones sacrificing our sons and daughters to yet another conflict that has zero bearing on our country and especially our state. Between the Middle East mobilization and upcoming European mobilizations, Tennessee is about to be down nearly 2,000 trained and willing state soldiers for when the next disaster hits. Our federal mission is to be, quote, capable of performing wartime missions, not performing wartime missions when we are not actually at war. I say this to clarify the boogeyman argument that approving HB 0129 will cause our state to lose federal funding. The equipment assigned to Tennessee will not be taken away. The development and training of soldiers being prepared for combat will not be defunded. The federal money to maintain equipment and readiness will not be withheld. Doing so would render the Tennessee National Guard combat ineffective and lose the DoD and Department of Army one of its largest trained and staffed armored cavalry assets and the most valued transport and refueling air wings. When the U.S. Congress does declare war, these assets will be ready and available. And remember, the federal government could not even withhold equipment and funding from the Taliban. I could go on for hours with in-depth examples of how the federal government, DoD, and even the Guard's own senior leadership has unconstitutionally used and abused the National Guard over the past 20 years of GWAT and past 5 years here at home. I'm happy to do so if any committee members wish to gain deeper understanding of National Guard uses, functions, and authorities. But for the sake of this testimony, I ask you to please consider that the Tennessee National Guard and its troops are first and foremost a state asset. Remember the Tennessee National Guard's own stated purpose and mission statements. And most importantly, please consider the true human cost if we continue allowing the regular federalization and deployment of your community, your neighbors, your family, and your sons and daughters. Respectfully submitted for your consideration, Nate Dressel.
Good.
So that's
I want to clarify something. So in the bill, it mentions 3 specific missions, and all those 3 specific missions are actually in state. So like enforcing the federal laws, dealing with insurrections, and protecting against an invasion. And those are all inside. But you guys, this bill is not actually going to prevent you from, certainly not going to prevent you from doing that, but you guys are still willing to deploy outside of the U.S. as long as there's a declaration of war, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And what the bill prevents National Guard troops from being deployed into combat without a declaration of war. It does not prevent National Guard troops from conducting the international missions that they are currently doing. Like I read about in there, we have troops in the Middle East, we have troops in Europe that are conducting training missions and joint force missions with allied counterparts. The bill does not stop any of that at all. It simply says that if we are going to send National Guard troops to war, Congress needs to declare war. It's pretty easy.
Yeah. It's not hard to figure out. Now, Eldridge asked for the study, but there's been no summer study, but he did meet recently with senior leaders of the National Guard that also oppose the legislation. Tell us what you know about that. And I've got their talking points if I need to go ahead and pull those up.
Yes. Supposedly there was a meeting that was held this past Thursday, August 28th, between Eldridge and some of the senior military leaders. I actually don't have a follow-up. I assume that the meeting happened, but I actually haven't heard the details of what happened there. But essentially, somebody put out information that it's talking points, I guess, from senior military or people lobbying on behalf of some of the military leadership in trying to kill the bill. Now, I've read through some of these talking points that I have, and a lot of them don't quite make sense to me.
Let me read the opening statement. This is what was on those. So I want to raise up something about this. This document provides an overview of risk associated with state-level limits on federalizing the National Guard, drawing lessons from the June 2025 federalization of the California National Guard. It offers targeted discussion points for legislators and proposes draft strategy to use in defeating Defend the Guard legislation. They make a reference to the situation in California, but the Defend the Guard bill has nothing to do with what happened in California, right?
Has zero to do with it. So when we're talking about National Guard being, deployed in California to quell the riots, or deployed quelling riots, wildfires, flooding, natural disasters, all of that stuff falls under the Defense Support of Civil Authorities, which is the DISC mission.
Yeah.
So the Defend the Guard bill does not touch the DISCA mission or Title 32. Title 32 is basically, if you think about your regular National Guard, if they're doing a response to a riot, to a natural disaster, they're on Title 32 orders. Right. It allows them to be on full-time pay. It allows them to work here in the United States within their state. Some of the Title 32 authorities allow them to help with law enforcement. And the Defend the Guard bill does nothing to weaken the Title 32 status. So I'm not really sure why they're referencing California federalization, eroding state authority, or causing ambiguous chains of command in emergencies. The Title 32 in the Defense Support of Civil Authorities mission has been one of the main roles of the National Guard for as long as the National Guard's been around.
Right. And it seems to me a stretch to think that the senior leaders of the Tennessee National Guard didn't know that. I mean, so that's either really concerning that they didn't know, or it's really concerning that they know, and they started off this right from the start, they're trying to be deceptive. Now, that's my opinion. That's the way it looks, is they were just deliberately trying to be deceptive. So they're either incompetent or in cahoots, and I'll just leave it at that. I'm not asking you to comment on that. That's just, when I read that, that's the way I take it.
Yeah, I'm not going to interpret the motives of whoever wrote this checklist, whoever submitted it. I'm not going to interpret their motives. What I do know is that, by and large, our state legislator, both representative and Senate, does not understand the function of the National Guard. Too many people think that the National Guard is just Army, and it's not. It is a state asset. So our state governor, our state legislator, they all have input on controlling what and how our state's National Guard is used. So when we have a subcommittee, or a whole, the whole House is largely uninformed about the National Guard and doesn't understand the legalities or authorities of the National Guard, it's very easy to give them misleading information.
Right. And their tendency is to defer what they would consider to be the experts, which would be the senior leadership of the Tennessee National Guard, and that would be my guess, is that's their natural inclination, is, oh well, these guys have to know what they're talking about, they're senior leaders, and that's, we know the so-called experts are not always experts, or they're not always honest experts.
No, I mean, we could say that a pharmaceutical rep is an expert in pharmaceuticals, but they're also trying to sell us something.
Right. A Pfizer guy, he's definitely an expert. So then this document goes on to, they ask, what are the risks and impacts to Tennessee adopting the Defend the Guard legislation? And they break down 3 categories. So the category, the risk, and then the impact. So the first category is they got operational risk, and they say it restricts federal deployment unless Congress declares war. Well, it restricts deployment overseas.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that's a risk. That's the bill. Yeah. It restricts the National Guard deploying to war when we're not at war.
Right.
That's not a risk. That's the intended purpose of this bill.
Yeah. So apparently they see following the Constitution as a risk. There's a risk involved with following the Constitution. I always kind of thought, when I heard that they wanted to do the summer study on this, wait a minute, we want a summer study to determine whether or not we're going to actually follow the Constitution. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. And then the impacts, it says it undermines rapid response capability and joint force integration. Any thoughts on that last part?
Undermines rapid. No, again, the National Guard's mission states that soldiers have to be trained, have to be ready. Soldiers have to be trained and ready for deployments. Equipment has to be maintained and ready for deployments. There's no way that this undermines rapid response capability. We're still a member of the military. We're still a member of Department of Army, the Bureau of the National Guard. If it's time to go to war, the boys are going to get it on. We're always preparing for war. We're just asking that Congress does its job, and if you want us to go to war, declare war. It's that simple. I mean, this is to put young men and women at risk to be killed in action when there's no clear and defined war it's obtuse.
Yep. And those leaders and those soldiers all take an oath to uphold the Constitution. They don't take an oath to uphold federal funding. They don't take an oath to uphold the opinion of senior leaders or federal people in federal leadership. They take an oath to uphold the Constitution.
Let's be honest. Right now, the use is only to uphold Raytheon stock.
Say that again?
I said right now the use is to uphold Raytheon stock.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. The defense contractor stock. Yeah. It seems that way.
We can keep deploying these kids at will, regardless of it being war, and it's an entire industry that's kept in business. And right now, the National Guard has higher deployment rates, or has had higher deployment rates through the entire global war on terror than your average active duty soldier did.
Wow.
So we have the kids that sign up 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year because they love their job, they love their family, they're going to college. Yet we turn them into the grab and go deployment force for 20 years of the global war on terror. Yep. I know National Guard guys that have never been on active duty that have way more deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq than active duty people do.
Yep.
It was all Guard deployments. Yep. And I'm not opposed to deploying when there's a reason, when we have a clearly defined mission, and again at this point, declare war.
Yeah.
And then you have access to all of your National Guard troops.
If it's important enough to send y'all, and really this goes for the active as well, if it's important enough to send them, then it's important enough to declare war. Otherwise, forget it. Obviously, if our troops are in an area, let's say you're on a training mission and you come under fire, well, obviously you're going to return fire. But that's not what we're talking here. We get involved with these open-ended deals where we put our guys in situations that there's a good chance they're going to get fired on, and then we're going to ask for, then we have to up the ante. And I think there's a lot of that goes on. And we've just been so many places we have no reason to be, no legitimate reason to be, and no congressional authorization to be. So I think people are tired of it, and it is part of the problem that we have in this country with the deficit and everything else. It's a big part of the problem by having all these extended undeclared wars.
Yes, and again, 20 years of the global war on terror, 7,085 KIA, large majority of that, the highest percentage per service was National Guard soldiers. And that's not for a lack of training, that's not for a lack of preparedness, that's just based on how many National Guard soldiers have been deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, Philippines, like all the places that Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, huge percentages of the National Guard going over and doing these missions. And what this has caused, you retired in 2007, I believe you said. So you were in during the Clinton era, when everyone looked at the National Guard as like, oh, it's just that fat mechanic over there. That's how the National Guard used to be viewed, though.
Oh, yeah.
It was the fat mechanic hanging out, smoking and joking.
The no-goes.
Not a professional soldier.
Right.
The global war on terror changed that. The National Guard, I've been with several different units throughout the Guard. I've worked with National Guard units overseas. It is a formidable fighting force. They are well trained. They're professional.
Well, they better be. The federal government's relying on them so much. They made them such a big part of the plan.
It's become so convenient for big Army or active duty military to just say, oh, let's call the Guard. The Guard will do it.
Yeah.
Well, again, these are kids that signed up for the 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. Yeah, a lot of them do want to deploy, and that's totally fine. They could go active duty, or they could get training missions overseas. But I just don't, having been to combat a couple times, having done these deployments and seen the long-lasting toll, it's not just while we're on the ground in Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever we're operating. It's what we bring home with us. And I just don't think that's an appropriate use of, some of our best citizens in our communities, unless there's a defined and reasonable cause. So,
yeah. The next category they have is legal/constitutional, which, and I think I had this up maybe on the show not long ago. It should be constitutional/legal, okay? Because if it's not constitutional, it's not legal. And they list the risk as it misinterprets Article 1 and Article 2 powers. I don't see there's nothing to misinterpret there. I mean, you have to declare war.
I would be curious to hear the more in-depth explanation of how it misinterprets Article 1 and Article 2 powers.
Well, they claim, and that's their impact, conflicts with federal law, Title 10/32, and it invites litigation. But there's no conflict there between 10 and 32.
There's no conflict between 10 and 32. The only going down this rabbit hole of misinterpretation and conflict, the only conflict would be is if you're intending to use soldiers on either Title 10 or Title 32 in an authority that is not allowed under one of those titles.
Right.
So the only misinterpretation or confliction would be if you intend to use the soldiers in a manner which they're not supposed to be used on that set of orders.
Right. And just to reiterate, Title 10 has to do with when you're actually deploying them overseas.
Deploying overseas, or if you're on active duty, an active duty soldier would be Title 10.
Right.
If a National Guard soldier is deploying, then they move them from Title 32 to Title 10.
Okay. And then 32 is all stateside.
All stateside.
Okay.
So Title 32 basically allows the National Guard soldiers to do those emergency stateside missions. Again, natural disaster response, helping law enforcement with riots. On Title 10, soldiers are not supposed to be helping law enforcement, and they can't be used in a law enforcement manner on Title 10.
Right. And the next category they have is strategic alignment, and they say the risks are that it disrupts the DoD force structure and planning. And that would weaken Tennessee's role in national defense and global deterrence.
Well, to me, that just says that active duty military is relying on the National Guard to be part of their playbook for regular rotations to combat zones.
Right.
So in that sense, yes, it disrupts DoD force structure and planning, but if we actually declare war, then, like I said, call up the boys.
And if we need more regular Army troops, then there's a way they can create more. I mean, that's one of the powers. They can ask for an increase in the defense spending, and they can create more active units or take in more active duty soldiers.
Yep. And at the height of the global war on terror, there definitely was a big issue with deployment to dwell time. I believe at the time they were looking for I think 1 to 4 or 1 to 5 ratio for deployment to dwell. So every day that you are deployed, you would have 4 or 5 days back at home station non-deployed. So, if you're deployed for 1 year, you're supposed to have 4 or 5 years between deployments. That was the intended deployed.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if it worked out that way or not.
Yeah, it stepped down to basically like a 1 to 2 ratio, if not 1 to 1, depending on what unit some of the guys were in. Yeah. But that's kind of where the National Guard came in during the GWAT years, and active duty just said, okay, we're going to work these National Guard units into the same rotation over and over again to try to fix the deployment to dwell ratio. But I mean, you had National Guard units that were just in the combat rotation, the same soldiers redeploying to the same combat zones, same cities, same team houses that they had already been in. And they just knew, like, all right, I'm deploying for a year, and I'll be home for 2 years, and then I'm going back to the same place again. I mean, everyone's deployment to dwell ratio was completely messed up during GWAT. But again, that's kind of what made this, big Army just depend on the Guard, because the Guard always said yes.
And we deployed overseas in the global war on terror, and while we're over there supposedly fighting terrorists, which, let's face it, they're Islamists, that's what they are, the population of Islamists has increased in America. The number of mosques in America has increased. The political power of the Islamists has, look, they've taken over chunks of Michigan. Now we have an Islamist/Marxist running for mayor in New York City. So we're going over there to fight, yet we left our borders wide open. We didn't do anything to really stop the flow of Islamists here. It just seems crazy to me. It just that, we'd been much better off to kick the bad guys out and secure our borders. That's the way I see it. But anyway,
it seems like an easy solution.
Yeah. Next category is funding and resourcing. They say the risk is it would jeopardize federal funding tied to Title X missions. I think we've already hit this. There's no impact on the Title X missions.
Nope. Again, the Defend the Guard bill doesn't restrict National Guard soldiers from going on Title X orders. Right. If they're deploying overseas to do training missions, if they're working with, again, our allied counterparts, and that's totally fine. The Defend the Guard bill does not restrict that. It only restricts the use for war and combat. So and again, the mission of the National Guard, we still have to stand ready for war. Yep. So I just can't see. I understand what they're trying to get at with that, but I can't see it actually happening, that they're going to take a state. If Tennessee passed the Defend the Guard bill, I cannot see the Department of Army and Department of Defense saying, oh, we're just not going to pay anything to the Tennessee National Guard anymore and put them on the sidelines.
Right.
Cannot see.
Well, now Hedgepath supports the legislation, right?
I actually don't know what Hegseth's stance on Defend the Guard is.
At one time, didn't he come out and support? Was that before he was SecDef?
It very well could have been before he was SecDef. I don't know Hegseth's current stance on Defend the Guard, but he was a National Guard infantry officer. I believe he was a 04 or a 03 when he was finally done. So he was a relatively junior National Guard infantry officer. I know that he deployed, and he also was on several DISCA-style missions, Title 32.
Right.
So he understands Title 10, Title 32, and what the actual National Guard mission is and what deployment actually means. So I would hope that he's on the side of Defend the Guard. But again, I don't know. I'd have to go read more about what he's said on it.
Right. One of the last categories they have here is reputation/trust risk, and they say it signals unreliability to federal partners, would damage Tennessee's standing in the interagency and national security circles. Yeah. That's just, we're going to look bad. We're going to look bad if we don't ignore the Constitution we took an oath to uphold and just go along to get along and send our guys. We're going to look bad.
Oh, hey, that's how we ended up in the COVID messes. They just went, go along to get along. I'm too afraid to say anything, so I'm going to force this on my troops.
Yeah.
How many tens of thousands of troops, if not more, decided to get out of the military because we had leaders that were just willing to go along to get along? Absolutely not.
Yeah. So I think we've covered Title 10 and 32 pretty good. Anything else you want to add to those? Any further clarification?
No, not on Title 2. Not on Title 10 and Title 32. Reading these points here, I don't know where the points came from, who actually wrote them, but I can see what they're trying to push on these. I'd be very curious to actually be a fly on the wall and hear the in-depth conversation that happened trying to support these points, because I don't think that they're very strong arguments against the bill.
Right. And we don't know if they actually had that meeting on the 28th.
I do not. My wife and I run a small business and have 2 kids, and I have just been drowning this week. So I have not followed up on what happened or didn't happen on the 28th yet.
Right. Now,
So Rick Eldridge is my representative. I did email him when I heard about this meeting, and I did offer to join. I didn't receive an invite, but I'm happy to show up as a subject matter expert and you'll lend my opinion.
Right. And as I understand it, and you may or may not know about this, the sponsor, Michelle Renault, she was informed, but it was late in the game. So apparently this had been planned for a while. And then she was informed kind of late in the game and couldn't make it. So, even if she'd gone, it would have been a deck stacked against her if you've got Rick there, who obviously wants to kill this, and if you've got all these senior leaders from the National Guard that want to kill it, she would have been at a severe disadvantage. And I don't understand why they would even have that meeting, because if you're going to do a summer study, that was obviously not a summer study, you got to bring both sides in and let both sides' experts say their piece.
Yeah, there has been no summer study. I don't know if they're going to try to count this as a summer study. I don't even understand why they would have a meeting that is clearly one-sided. And if you're going to have the meeting, have both sides there. Hear it out.
Right. Now, I will tell you this. We actually had a summer study last year, and it was like October. And part of that was they didn't want to do it. Part of that, it was an election year, and they did say that they were going to wait until after the primaries. But we did have one. So it's not just because summer is over doesn't mean that it's not, that it's impossible to have one. But obviously both sides need to be there. Both sides need to know ahead of time, hey, here's the date, bring your witnesses. But, here's the thing too. With what they've laid out, some of this stuff is, and granted, there's nobody's name attached to this, but with what they've laid out, and I understand this is not a courtroom, but I would say, okay, if this is your position, then you are either uninformed or you're deliberately trying to mislead. And I would think something like that could be brought up in the summer study, or maybe even addressed prior to the summer study, because you can prove everything on that document is not accurate. Correct?
It's opinion and speculation at best.
Right. Yeah, but Title 10 and 32 are not speculation. They're pretty clear.
That is cut and dry. That's black and white. So, like I said earlier, we have state legislators that are largely uninformed about what the National Guard really is and what its uses and authorities are. So it's very easy to sell them whatever you want to sell them.
Right.
Our veteran representation here in the state of Tennessee is very, very slim if you look at the actual representatives and senators.
I can only think of 2, but there may be more, but I only know of 2.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of military acumen in the Tennessee State House right now. And there should be, because the Guard is, first and foremost, a state asset.
Right.
So they have a direct role on what is going to happen or not happen to the Guardsmen of the state. The points being delivered. I'm not going to put words in the mouth of whoever wrote this or whoever's delivering them, but I think it's delivering a one-sided opinion to a very uninformed audience.
Right. That wants to defer to them.
Right.
Okay. Any closing thoughts?
Oh, closing thoughts on this. I do hope that the legislators in the committee actually read my testimony and considered it. Again, nobody has actually called me or written to me to get further information or get further opinion from me. I've been military now for 21 years, both active duty, National Guard, and Reserve. I think I have a pretty good understanding of what it means to be a soldier, and what, how, when, and why we should put our soldiers' lives at risks. And I think that this Defend the Guard legislation, it's a page and a half of legislation. It's very simple. It holds Congress's feet to the fire to make them actually declare war if they want to send these young men and women to war. I think it's straightforward, simple legislation. I do not believe that it's going to do anything to affect federal funding to the National Guard, training opportunities. The Tennessee National Guard, all of the National Guard is still needed and valued across the board, and I see this bill as protection for soldiers to make sure that they're used in the right manner, in the right location, the right authorities, and I think it should be a no-brainer to vote this into legislation.
Yeah, and you would think the states would want to do that. You would think, hey, I mean, there's at least there's got to be some governors out there, some state legislators who disagree with the way we have deployed people, active and Guard and Reserve, over the last 20 years without a declaration of war, and things we've done in the past in regards to that. You would think they would say, hey, we got to look out for our people, and if this is important enough for us to send people over there, then it's important enough for Congress to do its job. And if it's not important enough for Congress to do its job, then it's not important enough for us to send our guys over there. They should want to protect their citizens. Do you know how many states have already passed this? Any idea?
I do not right now. No, I'd have to talk to some of the guys that are driving the bill. I want to say it had some traction in Montana. Let me see.
Because, I mean, I know this is a national effort, and they're trying to get all the state legislatures to pass this. And, that goes back to states taking back their authority. They've got the opportunity here to kind of hem in the federal government and say, hey, you're not going to, if you're going to continue to send the active duty overseas without a declaration of war, we can't do anything about that. But we're not going to let you send our guys.
Yeah. I don't think it's fully passed in any states yet. We have several states with momentum on it. I do think that if we can get it passed in one or two states, it'll start taking rapidly across all the rest of them.
Right, and I'm sure it's coming back this session. I would assume that regardless of the summer study, because actually I said something earlier, but to clarify, usually they use summer study to kill a bill. That is normally what they do with summer study. But just the fact that it goes to summer study doesn't mean that it can't be brought back up. In fact, when it's sent to summer study, you can bring it back the following year as long as it's in the same session. So hopefully, I'm sure she'll bring it back. Hopefully it'll have better luck. Maybe another state will pass it before then, and that'll make it, take some of the, give it a little more momentum here in Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, Rick's feet are being held to the fire right now. This is 100% Rick's fault, and we're demanding that he give us the summer study that he promised, and by God, it better be an objective study. Right.
So any upcoming events, Defend the Guard events? I understand that's a national organization. Anything that you know might be pending? I know you're busy with the coffee business, but.
Yeah, pending Defend the Guard events, I do not know off the top of my head. Obviously, Dan McKnight is
right.
For most of the national level stuff. So I know you can follow Dan. I believe he's got a pretty active account on Twitter.
Yeah.
Or X, whatever we call it today. But yeah, following Dan McKnight on Defend the Guard is going to be the best way to stay up to date on all of the pieces across the country.
Right, yeah, and we've had him on this show and probably need to have him back on. I know the 10th Amendment Center did a really good job of laying out, explaining the Tennessee bill, which they're all the same. I mean, I don't think there's any real difference. It's pretty much, a cut and paste model. So anyway, well, hey, I appreciate you being with us, and thank you for what you do. Good luck with this bill. I do hope they have a summer study, an objective summer study. But in any event, I'm sure that it'll be back in the legislature again next year. And so thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
Have a good one. I want to thank the audience for taking the time to watch our program tonight. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, so please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons. By the way, we have 699 subscribers right now. Let's get to 700. We need at least one more. And yeah, so I mean, love to know who that's going to be. So all of you go ahead and subscribe, and we'll figure out who it was. How's that sound? Also, welcome to our Rumble viewers out there now. We are attempting on Rumble again. We didn't have a lot of luck with them in the past, but we are trying them again. So hit the subscribe buttons as well as the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. Thanks again to Jonathan and Mary for their financial support for the month of July and August. We really appreciate it. Check out our audio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, teeninformer.com. Find and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. A few announcements for you. The Stewart-Henry County chapter of the TFA will meet this Thursday, 7 p.m. at the Stewart County Visitor Center. Our speaker will be Arthur Hampton of the John Birch Society. You don't have to be a member to attend. If you don't know anything about the Birch Society, or if you've heard and don't know the real deal on it, they've been around for a long time. They've turned out to be right about a lot of things. So come on out and hear them. And the TFA will hold the state TFA will hold its annual fundraiser this Saturday, September 6th at the Farm Bureau Expo, also known as the James E. Ward Agricultural Center, 945 East Batter Lane, Lebanon, Tennessee. General Flynn will be the guest speaker. You can still get tickets at TennesseeFirearms.com. The Stewart County Republican Party will hold their annual Reagan-Trump dinner at the Stewart County Visitor Center September 11th. Doors open at 5:30 and dinner is served at 6. We will have a candidate forum for the 7th District candidates. Tickets are $25 for a table or $6 for $120. Let me back up. $25 per or a table of $6 for $120. Call Dave at 931-237-1026 for tickets. Tune in again tonight for our second guest, Stuart Parks of J6 fame, who is also a candidate for the 7th District congressional seat. Next Monday, our guest is Vanessa Miller, here to inform us of some very suspicious activity and some disturbing claims about the nonprofit organization ISHA. Our second guest next Monday will be Pastor, and I'm sure I'll murder this name, Shahram Hadian, a convert to Christianity from Islam who leads the Truth and Love Ministry. He will discuss the threat of the Red-Green Alliance and the reality of Muslims and Marxists working together to take down America. You need to hear this. Hope you can join us. That's it for now. Good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.